A $500,000 torpedo versus a $13 billion aircraft carrier. 30,000 American sailors stuck in the Persian Gulf with literally nowhere to run. And get this, only a 10% chance that any Iranian strike actually punches through U.S. defenses. Sounds like a losing bet for Iran, right? Yeah, here's the thing nobody's talking about. Iran doesn't need to sink a single carrier to come out on top. They just got to make the Gulf way too dangerous for anyone to operate in. And they've got 6 brutal tactics to pull it off. All right, picture this for a sec. 2 totally normal-looking cargo ships cruising near a U.S. aircraft carrier. Everything seems completely chill, nothing suspicious. Then boom, someone hits a button and a shipping container door swings wide open, and out comes a freaking missile. These are Iranian-made anti-ship missiles hiding in plain sight this whole time. And right behind them, swarms of low-flying drones and fast attack boats pouring out of the cargo holds. Oh, and don't sleep on the mini-submarines lurking underneath. All of them launching torpedoes at the exact same moment. So how does a regional power like Iran actually pull this off against the most powerful navy on the planet? It's called asymmetric warfare, and it's absolutely brutal. Let me walk you through all 6 tactics they'd use. First up, the swarm attack. Iran operates hundreds of small, crazy fast attack boats loaded with machine guns, rockets, and missiles. Now, one of these little boats going up against a U.S. destroyer, that's basically a suicide mission. But 50 of them coming at you from every direction at once, that's a whole different ball game. The whole point is to throw more targets at the ship than its defense systems can possibly handle. Overwhelm the radar, overwhelm the guns, overwhelm the crew. It's not about winning one-on-one, it's about creating total chaos. But here's where things get really wild. Those swarm boats, they're actually just the distraction. The real killer is something you can't even see coming. Which brings us to tactic number 2, mining the Strait of Hormuz. 20% of the world's entire oil supply passes through this narrow choke point every single day. And Iran, they've got thousands of naval mines, including smart mines. These things can actually listen for the specific acoustic signature of enemy ships. They'd use submarines, small boats, even disguised civilian vessels to drop these mines right into the shipping lanes where oil tankers travel daily. And the goal here isn't just about military targets. This is straight-up economic warfare. Block those shipping lanes and global oil prices go through the roof overnight. Suddenly, the U.S. and its allies are feeling massive economic pain without a single shot being fired. Now let's talk about geography for a minute. Because Iran's coastline is basically a natural fortress, the third tactic turns the entire Persian Gulf into what military planners call a kill zone. Iran's coast is mountainous and super rugged, perfect cover for mobile missile launchers. They use what's called shoot-and-scoot tactics. A truck-mounted launcher fires off a ballistic missile, then disappears into thin air. By the time U.S. satellites spot the launch site, the launcher's already hidden deep in a mountain tunnel. Good luck trying to find it again. This means U.S. ships are under constant threat from land with literally nowhere to hide. And speaking of hiding, let's take this underwater. The fourth tactic is the submarine ambush, and honestly, it's terrifying. Here's the deal about the Persian Gulf, it's actually pretty shallow. And that's a huge problem for America's massive nuclear submarines. But it's absolutely perfect for Iran's fleet of small diesel-electric mini-subs like the Ghadir class. These little guys can just sit silently on the seafloor, waiting patiently for a carrier or destroyer to pass right overhead. They're so small and quiet that sonar has a really hard time picking them up. They position themselves near choke points like the Strait of Hormuz and just wait for the perfect moment. When the time comes, they fire heavyweight torpedoes targeting the hull and propulsion systems. A successful hit could disable a carrier's flight deck and completely cripple its ability to project air power. These subs can also lay underwater mines, forcing U.S. warships into predetermined ambush zones, where missiles and drones are already waiting to strike. Which brings us to tactic number 5, drone warfare. Iran has invested heavily in becoming the drone superpower of the Middle East. And we're not just talking about surveillance drones here. These are loitering munitions, basically kamikaze drones. The tactic is to launch these things in massive waves. Their targets: the sensitive radar dishes and flight decks of U.S. warships. Blind the sensors, shut down flight operations. And suddenly those billion-dollar warships become sitting ducks for the missile strikes that follow. But here's the thing that really keeps Pentagon planners up at night. The sixth tactic, going after the bases themselves. See, the U.S. fleet doesn't operate in a vacuum. It relies on ports in Bahrain for refueling and air cover from bases in Qatar. Iran has the largest ballistic missile arsenal in the entire Middle East, and they know exactly where every single American base is located. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar hosts around 8,000 American troops. It's basically the regional headquarters for U.S. Central Command. Iran could hit it with ballistic missiles like the Fateh 110, which has a 300-kilometer range, or the Qaem one that can reach all the way out to 800 kilometers. These missiles can be set to detonate just above the surface, what they call an airburst. That maximizes fragmentation and increases the blast zone significantly. We're talking 100 to 300 pounds per square inch of overpressure, enough to destroy hardened aircraft shelters and fuel tanks. Then there's the naval base in Bahrain. Over 9,000 American personnel stationed at the only permanent U.S. naval shore base in the Middle East. This is where aircraft carriers dock, where the Fifth Fleet calls home. Iran's anti-ship cruise missiles launched from coastal batteries could target warships right there in port. And don't forget about Iran's proxy forces in Yemen and Iraq. They could launch indirect attacks or stir up instability from multiple directions at once. In Kuwait, Camp Arifjan and Ali al-Salem Air Base host around 13,500 troops, all of them well within range of Iranian missiles. Now here's an interesting twist most people don't know about. Iran has actually re-engineered old Soviet missiles from the Cold War era. They took SA-2 surface-to-air missiles and converted them into anti-ship weapons. These things can travel at Mach 3.5. Launched from just 45 kilometers out, a U.S. destroyer barely has time to react. The goal here isn't just physical destruction, it's psychological. Disrupt the trade routes, make the waters feel completely unsafe. Iran's missile forces are scattered across hardened underground bunkers and mobile launchers all over the country. They're designed to survive a first strike and hit back fast. The targets would be runways, fuel storage, aircraft shelters, command centers. Basically everything the U.S. needs to keep fighting. So here's the bottom line. Iran absolutely cannot win a conventional war against the United States, and they know it. But here's the kicker. They don't actually need to win. They just need to make the cost completely unbearable. Damage one carrier, spike oil prices, put 30,000 American lives at risk, and suddenly the math changes completely. The question isn't whether Iran would use these tactics in a real conflict. The real question is America actually ready for them?